Now, I was 17 at the time, and I was really into history, very into history. And my understanding of that time period, when he's talking about 5,000 years, was that was back into the Neolithic. And I didn't see how that matched up with what he was saying about a Vedic age, because I had this concept of primitive people, you know, perhaps dressed in furs, and the idea that society was evolving from that point, you know, to our present state of technological advancement. So it didn't make sense to me. And I knew that there were historical remains that were older than 5,000 years. And so I thought to myself that if there was such an age as a Vedic age, then surely it would be in the textbooks. Surely the professors would be teaching this at university. So I had, it was a bit of a quandary, whether to get up and leave or whether to stay. Because I thought to myself, well, I'm going out on the street every day. I was a brahmachari and distributing books, which I didn't like all that much. And living in a brahmachari ashram in London. And I thought, if Prabhupada can be wrong about this, he can be wrong about everything. So I was sitting there in a semi-state of not only confusion, but panic. I wondered if I should just get my coat and leave. Because the idea of a Vedic age, which was only 5,000 years old, did not make sense to me. Everything else in Krishna consciousness, I was fine with. The transmigration of the soul, Krishna taking birth, or rather appearing as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the principles, everything made sense. But this just did not seem right to me. So I had to think it through in my mind. And I thought, okay, well, this seems very dodgy. But I thought I'll give Prabhupada the benefit of the doubt, because he's a pure devotee. He's a Sanskrit scholar. Perhaps he knows something that the academics don't know. So I gave him the doubt tentatively. But my instinct was just to run. My instinct was just to get the hell out of there. So I promised myself that although I didn't understand what he was talking about, that I would make it my business to find out what he was talking about. Because Prabhupada just made this random claim, and he didn't back it up with any form of authority. He just said there was a golden age. It existed until 5,000 years ago, and it has been lost. So I thought, well, I'll investigate it myself, because I was naturally interested in history. When I was a young boy, I always went to bed, even at 8 years old, reading encyclopedias, looking up reading historical stories. I always got top marks in school in my history. I had a great history teacher You know, I loved it. I loved anything to do with history. So I was well aware that what he was saying was, you know, quite off as far as the academics were concerned. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. I thought to myself, I'll research this myself. And over the following years, I did research it. Whenever I had the opportunity to study anything about Aryan culture, anything about ancient traditions, I would read them. Actually, one of the first things that I discovered was I looked in a dictionary and I looked under the word Sanskrit, and it describes Sanskrit as an Indo-European language. So I thought, okay, there's a connection, Indo-European. Why should Sanskrit be called Indo-European? And over the years, I read quite a lot about this subject. And most of it didn't make sense, because the academics were of the opinion that what they call Aryan culture, or the Aryan culture that came into Europe, was not originally from India. Some of them say that it came from around the Caspian Sea, and some of them say that it originated in Persia, and there are many different theories. And the theories are called today, academics call them the Aryan invasion theories. And there are many Aryan invasion theories into India and out of India. They're all rubbish. They're all absolute rubbish. There isn't one bit of evidence to substantiate the Aryan invasion theory into India or out of India. It's purely political. It's purely that when the British took over India, they were looking for ways of conquering the country, and so they, in order to put down the original culture and the great history of India, they tried to say that the culture of India is not Indian, it's Persian, and that it went to India, it was taken by Aryans about about 3 centuries BC, and there were hordes of Aryans invading the north of India, and they pushed the primitive people of India who worshipped the lingam. Because they were Victorian, they thought of the lingam as a primitive type of worship, because the lingam of Shiva is basically a penis. So these people who are worshipping a penis, a giant penis, they must be much more primitive. And they worship also, there's a goddess worship, the worship of the yoni. There's worship of Durga, who is a very fearful looking goddess. So they formulated the idea that these were the original inhabitants of India, and when the Aryans came to the north, they forced all these people to the south. So that's the Aryan invasion into India. But then they needed to formulate more theories, because all throughout Europe, they started to discover elements of Indian history in the architecture and in the folk stories. And so they formulated new ideas to fit in with the old one. So that the Aryan culture was initially taken into India by Aryan hordes who mass murdered, wiped out the people of North India, forcing some of them to the south, and then